Sciences are always my favorite ones. Last week it was first grade kids, and I almost fall asleep every time. So I'm like, oh no.
Hopefully I didn't put you to sleep.
No. It's good. All right, so we'll start off here with this section. We want to understand decisions you made in planning for this lesson and how it fits into the unit and year. So how does this lesson connect to and build on students' prior skills and knowledge? What was taught before this lesson and what will come after it? Discuss the sequence of lessons that surround this one lesson.
Prior to this lesson, the students and I had a lesson on what they already know about polymers. So in the previous grades, 9th grade for some of them and 10th for others, so I have a mix of 10 and 11. They learned about biological polymers, and some of the students that took physical science also learned about some of the synthetic polymers. So the first lesson we did to start this unit was on what they already know. So what are they coming to the class knowing? And so a lot of them come to class knowing a little bit about a monomer, what that is, and some of them understand that DNA and proteins are biological polymers. So we talked about that. And then the following lesson, I introduced to them some other types of synthetic polymers that we use that are man-made, and we talked about some of the implications of making those polymers on the environment. And then next we learned a little bit about what a hydrocarbon is exactly, and they learned how to draw a hydrocarbon, and they learned how to name hydrocarbons, just simple single-chain hydrocarbons. So this lesson then came right after a mini lab that we did in class the prior week, where students investigated some characteristics of plastic polymers, mostly, and they looked at the vocab that we use today, like the plasticity of a polymer or the elasticity, and they observed how the structure, they had the structures of the polymers, how it affected these characteristics. So that brings us to today, where they then had to do the reverse, and they had to come up with a structure based on the characteristics of the polymer. And then next time we meet, we're going to finish this lesson up, and we're then going to work a little bit more on what happens to a polymer, especially man-made polymers, when they are disposed of, and some of the negative impacts that they have on the environment.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
That aspect of it, it's something they don't really think about.
They don't.
A lot of people don't think about it.
Right.
Using those everyday objects too, I noticed.
Mm-hmm.
Like the plastic water bottle and PVC pipe and all that. Very cool. All right. Second part here. This is referencing the text, and I don't know if you have a text or not, but let's see. So is the text used in this lesson part of a sequence of texts designed to build skills and knowledge? If so, please give examples of other texts that form the sequence. Yeah,
so the text to me in this lesson was, there were really multiple texts. The first was the graphs. So it's not a traditional text per se in that it's not a textbook, but it was their text for this lesson that they needed to refer back to in order to answer the questions. And the second piece was more traditional text, where they were from their previous lab, where it gave them their definitions of their vocab words and talked a little bit about what that meant and how those things were tested. And so they needed that piece too in order to complete this lesson. So they had to refer back to both of the texts to come up with the final written description of their polymers. It's not really a part of a larger text, so it's just one of many that they'll get for this unit.
Cool. All right. Talk about the standards targeted in this lesson. What did you do to make this lesson reflect the full intent of that standard?
So the standard that I wanted to really focus on in this lesson is this Common Core State Standard 1112.1, which is, I do have a mix again of 10 and 11th graders, so I shot for the higher standard, the 11th grade standard, because it's broken down 9 and 10, then 11 and 12. So I went for that standard, which is all about forcing or having students using the text to support their claims. And so again, I know the text was not traditional, but in the sense that it wasn't a textbook or an article, but they had to use, the whole lesson was focused around their graphs and using those to support their drawing and their claim made about the chemical structure of their polymer.
Excellent.
Oh wait, I have one more.
Oh, sure.
Okay. Another standard that I use has to do with a new science framework standards, and that's standard 4, or number 4, where it again asks kids to use evidence from a text to come up with a conclusion or to find a pattern in the data.
Excellent. Yeah, I think they're going to like that. All right. So which of the core action indicators do you think this lesson best exemplifies, and why?
I think that it exemplifies both core action indicator 1, which is about the text. What is the text, and what is the complexity of the text? And so, the text itself, they had to find relationships in each of the graphs. They had to know what those words meant, and so that's why we did a little of the annotating beforehand, before I got them started. And they had to do that for all 6 of them, which some of them did run tests on this the day before, or the class period before, but some of them this was not information that they were as comfortable with. So we took some time with that. And so the complexity of the text, being the graphs, was at the level that was appropriate for them, especially where we're at the unit. In science, it's all about analyzing data from graphs and charts and coming up with patterns. And so that exemplifies core action 1. And then in the second core action, which asks them to really have to refer back to that text in order to come up with the answers, that was also a highlight of this lesson because they needed to in order to come up with the final drawing of their polymer structure.
All right, so the second part. We are interested in how the shifts required by the CCSS are being incorporated into your instruction. Discuss how this lesson illustrates the shifts required by the CCSS.
Okay.
I don't know if you want to lay your notes or if you're...
No, I think I'm good. All right, so the shifts are all about, small changes in what we already do. And so for me, this lesson made small changes in that the students were required to cite specific evidence from the text on what they were seeing and what that meant about their polymer. So they had to tell me not just where they got their information from, like this is from figure 4, figure 4 shows that as this variable increases, the other increases, or vice versa. They had to tell me that relationship as they cited their claim, as they wrote their claim. And so that's maybe a small difference or a small shift that is being made, because before the Common Core State Standards, I might not have been as strict about exactly how they come up with where they got their information. Also in the shifts, using age-appropriate text and complex text that fits into the unit or lesson. I believe that this lesson made that approach and approached that shift because we did use graphs and tables that show different relationships and that use vocabulary suited for the 11th or 12th grader.
All right. How did you teach the content of this lesson or text prior to the CCSS? What is the same and what is different?
Well, this is a tricky question for me to answer because this is the first year I've taught this class before, so I've never had the experience of teaching polymers to a class.
Simple enough, yeah. All right, excellent. So we're on the third part here.
Okay.
Student engagement is critical to the work of the CCSS. We want to understand how you ensured that all students had the opportunity to productively engage in the work of the lesson. How did or do you support all students in working with grade level text? This is a long one. And how do you create opportunities for students who are advanced to engage more deeply with grade level or above grade level text?
to answer the first part of the question about making sure that all students are engaged in a text, everyone had their own charts and graphs, and so at the very beginning of the lesson, when we looked at, I really had them look deeply at those. I made sure that they had an opportunity to share with their neighbor what it is that they concluded from their graph. And so that way students that maybe weren't sure what was going on or what trend was that they were seeing could look to ask their neighbor and confirm that they have and see the same data or see the same trends in the data. So that would help. So that helped all students have an opportunity to look at the text, and it gave them some reassurance that, okay, this is what I see and this is what my partner sees. So this must be what's going on in the text. And then giving the class the opportunity to share with me what they saw, encouraged the students that especially picked up on it quickly to share what it is that they saw in the text. And so when we had maybe a doubt about figure, I believe 5 in our text, we made sure we cleared that up before they started to actually investigate their own polymers. Does that answer that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. All right. How do you know the students were able to successfully respond to the text-dependent questions and tasks with precision? Did students acquire the literacy skills addressed in this lesson? What did or do you do for the students who did not acquire the literacy skills addressed in this lesson?
At this point, it's hard to say for sure what the students acquired because I wanted to see the final document. But when I was walking around the room, I tried to push the students that I knew might have some difficulty with the complexity of the text. And so if that meant, sitting with that group and working with them to push them to get to where I wanted them to be, that's what I did during this lesson, this particular lesson. And then we'll see at the end when they turn in their final assignments, especially, or even the homework piece of this where they need to read through some more traditional texts and come up with the name of the polymer that they looked for, or that they handled at their desk. That'll give me a better idea about who is getting who is understanding the trends and the data within the text.
Excellent. Which behaviors from Core Action 3 did the students best exemplify in this lesson? What actions have you taken as a teacher to make that happen?
So in Core Action 3 is all about student engagement. And so I think the students were engaged, especially when they got the chance to look at their polymers at their table and to decipher what the chemical structure was of their polymer. I think that I made sure that students were engaged when planning this lesson by making sure that they had a part in making the decisions and coming up with the final structure. I think that this engagement piece is really the most important because without the engagement piece, or with the engagement piece, if the students are really engaged, then they're more likely to be able to look at more complex texts and have the confidence and the want to read through the text and to not be as intimidated because they want to figure out, they want to know, they're engaged with the text. So I think this engagement piece is something that I felt that my students, I would have liked to see a little bit more, and perhaps at the beginning of the lesson, I could have given them a little more control over the classroom, maybe asking some of the students to come up and write on the smart board, for example, what they saw in the charts. But overall, I think once we moved to the student-centered part of the lesson, they were engaged.
All right, so this one is about student work. This might not apply for today, but would you like to comment on any of the submitted student work? Is there something that delighted or surprised you?
I don't have the student work yet,
Okay.
but next time.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah.
All right, we're on to the last section, I believe. Perfect. Great instructors are continuously learning. We want to understand what you celebrated in this lesson and what we would improve on. So reflecting on this lesson, what worked particularly well and what might you do differently?
In regards to this lesson, I think that the piece that worked really well was the focus on the text, the focus on core action one, because they were constantly having to flip through multiple pieces of text and then synthesize that information from their lab, the previous class, and from the graphs and charts from today's class to write their final answers. And so I was really pleased with that. There was no way the students could get through this lesson without referring to the text, to the graphs and the charts. The thing that I would change about this lesson is, again, the students were abnormally quiet today, and so I would hope that I would try different strategies to engage them more, especially at the beginning of the lesson, to pull them in and get them a little bit more warmed up before they had their chance to do their own work in their groups, within their groups.
And was there any surprises or unexpected student behaviors or reaction?
I suppose I was just surprised at no, sorry.
All right. Well, that, my friend, is it.
That's it?
That was a